Good morning. Thank you very much for coming today. We are very grateful and privileged to have with us the Honorable Robert Amsterdam, also known as Bobi Wine, who, after a horrific attack by the armed forces of Uganda on him and on his entourage, which involved the assassination of his driver and close friend, who was sitting in the seat that he had occupied just moments before. Bobi is amazingly here with us today. So I'm going to ask you to begin your remarks, Bobi, and I will then make some comments on some of the legal issues.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be here, and most importantly, I'm glad to still be alive. I'm here against the advice of my doctors and my family, but I thought it's more important to be here, especially on behalf of my fellow Ugandans, particularly those in Chad on the east and those that still go through the repression. It should be noted that I'm not presenting myself as a victim, because I'm nobody's victim. I'm a survivor, and I would rather represent resilience rather than giving up. I was brutally tortured by some armed soldiers from the SFC, beaten, brutalized, and abused, and later locked up in the military barracks. Charges were later dropped, and I was taken to a civil prison, and finally I was bailed up. I'm here for specialized treatment, which I'm still undergoing. I am humbled to see that my brutalization has attracted the attention of my countrymen and women, and indeed the world over. But still I'm challenged, because many other Ugandans go through the same or even worse brutalities. For example, when I was in prison, there's this guy that cannot go off my mind, whose back was broken. There's a lady who had just had a baby through a C-section, who was beaten so bad that by the time we were released, she was still passing blood. There's another lady called Sauda, who I don't know if she will survive. All these people and many others, I'm sad that the world might never know them. So the opportunity that I get, I always want to raise my voice to speak for them, because I'm lucky that maybe the world knows me but may never know such people, and I want to use every ability in my voice to speak out for them. That's why I'm here, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, I'm also here to symbolize the resilience of Ugandans, to tell them that we still stand for justice, equality, freedom, and dignity for everybody. We represent the power of the people. Ugandans have always been wanting freedom. They've always been wanting to be the masters of their destiny. They've always wanted to live in a country where leaders are servants and the people are the true masters. And that is what we still advocate for. We advocate for people power, which indeed is our power. And to assert that no amount of brutality, no amount of repression is going to cow us down. We swore to ourselves that we shall insist on the fight for freedom. I'm here for treatment, and as soon as my treatment is done, I am going back home, because Uganda is my home. Uganda is our home. we have never had and will never have another home, and it's upon us to create a home that is good for us, for our children, and our children's children. I thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Briefly, while Bobby is receiving treatment here, we will be meeting with congressmen, congresswomen, members of various departments, the State Department included, and we will be providing them with details of what has been happening in Uganda, the brutality, the truly criminal activity and violations of human rights that are occurring daily. And we want the American taxpayer to know that the American taxpayer is funding this. The military equipment we are supplying to Uganda is being used in a war of terror against Uganda's citizens. This is not an isolated incident. Uganda has a storied history of political violence, an ongoing history that the West has largely ignored. We cannot ignore it any longer. We cannot ignore Africa any longer. Within the last few weeks, the German chancellor was touring Africa, thank God. The Chinese have invited heads of state from all over Africa to Beijing. It is time for America's voice to be heard, and heard loudly, in terms of looking at, A, the Leahy Act. The fact is, American arms and American equipment have been used to torture Ugandans. We call on the U.S. government to immediately suspend military funding to Uganda, launch an investigation immediately into the use of U.S. equipment to torture Ugandan citizens. We are compiling a list under the Magnitsky Act. Ugandan torturers, beware. Your ability to travel, your ability to hold assets abroad may well be put at risk by your continuing to participate in a special squad of torturers set up specifically by the Ugandan army to engage in this brutality, using American military equipment. We have absolutely made the determination that we are going to conduct an investigation into the deaths of other opponents of this regime, suspicious poisonings, car accidents. There is a long list of tragic activities which involve those who dare to speak out in Uganda. It is incredibly important to those who work with Bobi Wine to try to ensure his safety on his return to Uganda. We are here against medical advice because we know that whatever medical treatment he receives here will be negated by the treatment he receives there if they continue the ongoing brutality. We have to find a way to stop it. We have to find a way to derail the Museveni's regime's descent into terror and torture against their own people. Now, a lot of comments have been made with people saying, well, because he's got an international lawyer, somehow there's some foreign agent involved. There ain't no foreign agent involved. There is, however, something to note, and that is that the Museveni regime is a foreign agent of the American military with respect to its activities in Sudan and Somalia. And therefore, it is Washington that has the ultimate control over what's going on in Uganda today. And that is why, despite the torture, and let me assure you that not only has he been in hospital and undergoing treatment, but I have been with him at the most recent examination. And we are constantly seeing from the Ugandan authorities a sort of torture double act. First, they brutalize you. Then they illegally incarcerate you. And then they give you the false news treatment, where they want you to embarrass yourself and your family and suffer the indignity of putting your body on display so you can demonstrate just how vicious they are. We're not doing that. We are accumulating the medical evidence to take it to the correct authorities to seek justice. And that is what we intend to do. That is exactly why we are here. And we are here to put the Ugandan authorities on notice that when Mr. Wine returns to Uganda to face these charges of treason that he is going back to face. And I can't talk about those charges because under Ugandan law, it is inappropriate for a lawyer to speak about charges that are sub judice. What I can say is that this is the third set of charges. First, they charged him with respect to the motorcade. That was dropped. Then they said that he had an arms cache. But when the people in the hotel said the police planted the arms, they dropped those charges. So this is the third try. I get particularly irate about torture and brutality, not only because of my history in Africa, but because of my history in Russia. I was privileged to represent Mikhail Khodorkovsky, and I've been involved in Russian cases on and off for many years. And the Museveni regime is taking a page from Mr. Putin's book. They torture you, they poison people in England, and then they call it false news. This is exactly what we're engaged in here. And we're not going to play that game. The Ugandan public deserves better. Africa's youth deserves better. And Bobi Wine and his colleagues can no longer be silent victims of torture and brutality. Thank you very much. We are going to take a few questions. I think
could move a vote of thanks. I cannot forget to thank the world for standing with us. When I was in incarceration, I did not appreciate the magnitude of support and standing with us. It was until I left the military detention that I saw how much people stood with us, not just in Uganda, but from Kenya to South Africa, from Rwanda to Nigeria. People stood with us. I must give special respect to the people that paid the price. Yasin Kauma. Excuse me.
I'm Michelle Kellerman with National Public Radio. I wonder if you're worried at all that you talk about going home, but if you're worried at all that you may get stuck here, that they may not let you come back home. And if you could talk a little bit about the contacts to date or the response of the U.S. government to date, whether you're satisfied at all with what they've been telling you. And if you don't mind moving the microphone a little bit more in front of you so we can hear. Thank you.
I must go back home. Uganda is my home. I don't have another home. I'm Ugandan. And I'm going back home. Yeah.
And we're not going to comment yet. It's too early to comment on any American response. I want to say, obviously, we're grateful that Bobi is here. And, thank God that he is here and that he can get the kind of highly specialized help that we've been able to obtain. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Paul, did you help us in America? 2 questions. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry. Paul, in the whole Voice of America, two questions for you. First of all, Honorable Chagranyi, good to see you. Maybe comment about your health situation right now. How are you feeling? What have the doctors said, and for how long are you going to undertake the treatment? Secondly, can you also respond to some criticism that is coming from the Ugandan government in regard to the statement that you issued earlier, talking about how you're tortured? The government has come out and said that they did not torture you. Can you respond to that kind of criticism? Thank you.
Well, it is a habit for the Ugandan authorities to torture people and then outrightly come out and lie. Like I said, I'm not the first person to be tortured. We've seen people that have been brutalized even worse than I have been. You've seen the Muslim clerics that have been tortured. We've seen women that have been tortured. Even right now, we have people that are rotting in hospitals out of torture. And like I said, it's a privilege for me to be able to even access specialized treatment. And the least I can do is to speak out for those hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have been brutalized. I cannot continuously, like Bob said, subject myself to indignities. I cannot undress myself, but just a little that you can see of my body is probably signal to the torture that I went through and the torture that I believe people are still going through. And also to mention, just I was on the way here, I got information. My wife is running a charity organization called Helping Hand Uganda, and it is helping girls to make reusable sanitary pads. But her co-founder was kidnapped and tortured so badly for 2 days, and he was being forced to agree with the security forces that he will be a key witness to pin me, that and to confess that I'm being funded through my wife's NGO. That is the least that we see, but this is ongoing with many people. Yeah.
How about your health?
All I know is I'm still alive as of now.
What happened to the hand?
This and more, my skin keeps peeling. This blister that I received, all this hand has been peeling. I got injections that I don't know about, and I spent quite a long time on cuffs, shackled both hands and legs, and my hands swelled a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Rosalind Jordan with Al Jazeera English. Mr. Wine, there have been reports suggesting that the government is hoping that any oil deals it makes with the Chinese government could somehow buy it more credibility with young people, that it could lead to more jobs for young people. Do you believe that the Museveni government is acting in the best interest of Ugandan youth? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Uganda is a population that is over 80% under 35. That's over 80% younger than me. And still it boasts of over 80% unemployment for the young people. I come from the ghetto, like many other people. All we desire is to have a say in our country. It is not about Museveni, and indeed it's not about me or anybody. It's about the people of Uganda. And all we desire is to see that the people of Uganda are the masters of their own destiny.
Yes, sir.
I'm Andrew from South Africa. I have a few questions for you. Is it possible for you to engage South African companies that are in Uganda to disinvest in Uganda? That's one. Two, what is the African Union doing about human rights in Uganda? And three, is it possible for you, or have you spoken to the UN, let's say the new chairperson of the Human Rights Commission, Michelle Bachelet? Thanks.
As we speak right now, like I said, I came out to speak to you against my doctors and my family's advice, but I will continue to engage team and friends to see what together we can do to liberate ourselves. And indeed, all options, all decent options will be put on the table.
And I just should add that international investors in Uganda have obligations under the Global Compact, the Equator Principles, corporate human rights principles. We intend to contact major investors in Uganda to copy them in respect to the torture issues, to highlight the lack of proper governance in Uganda, to highlight the militarization that is going on there in terms of popular behavior and of the government, and to ask them to intervene. It is now, frankly, a duty of these multinationals that attend all these conferences and spend a lot of money on all these nice CSR documents to step up. We have a critical situation in an absolutely critical country in Africa, and now those people who invest in Tullow and other activities in Uganda, like the key banks, they're all going to be contacted. And we're going to put our pedal to the metal in terms of making sure that investors understand that while individuals don't have access to rule of law, that is an issue that impacts their investment. And while we're not today in any way seeking disinvestment from Uganda, what we're seeking is responsible investment in Uganda.
Including from the Chinese and Russians?
Listen, you know, frankly, one of the things that's important for the Chinese to understand, as I think they are starting to, now that Malaysia has rejected two of their newest projects, is that there is, even for China, a balance. And yes, I think given the massive presence of China in Africa, there is no country that should not be made aware of what is going on. But it is, as I said, sadly, it is U.S. weaponry. So we have to deal first at home. It is U.S. weaponry, and it is $500 million of U.S. taxpayer money that's going to these arms that are being used against Uganda's own people.
What about U.S. churches that are involved in Uganda?
Absolutely another area that we intend to touch on. But I think, you know, people need to understand that what happened as a result of Arua is only beginning to be digested. We have people in intense pain. We have a government that is, in fact, reeling from being found out. And I think it's incredibly important to recognize that this vicious brutality against the 33 in Arua is not a new development. What's new is that because of Mr. Wine's notoriety, it's come to all of our attention. That's really what's new. And when you see what's happening in Ethiopia and you see what's happening in South Africa, there is a new wind blowing in Africa, and the Ugandan government has to get back to basic principles, and they have to disband the torture cell, and they have to bring those people to justice. Thank you very much. Okay, one more.
My name is Samuel. Question is, what do you make of the treason charges that have been put against you? And secondly, do you consider yourself to be an opposition leader who would run for president during the next election?
Excuse me, we've been asked by our Ugandan counsel not to have Bobby speak on the issue of treason. I have to respect him, and we've got to stay away from that.
Sure, I will not talk about the treason charges because it's sub judice. But again, I want you to know that it's not about me. This is not about Bobi Wine. I'm just one of the more than 40 million Ugandans that want freedom, that want justice, and they want dignity. So this is not about me. It's about that young lady out there who works every day to feed her little child. It's about the young men and women who are educated but cannot find a job. It's about the religious leaders in their interreligious council who every day want change and seek for peaceful transition. It's about the elders that are continuously embarrassed by the ongoings in the country. It's about all of us. And that's why we say it is people power. It's not about Bobi Wine. It's about the people of Uganda.
Sorry.
Thank you. Bobi Wine, thank you for being here. Malika Bilal from The Stream on Al Jazeera English. What will justice look like for you and for your wife, Barbie? What does that look like?
Justice is, one, the leaders being answerable to the people, people being the true masters of their destiny. Justice is having everybody equal before and under the law. That is justice for me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Ni Akwete. I'm not a journalist, but I'm an activist, and I'm Africa-born. And I have worked to see the U.S. support democracy across Africa for 40 years. And so I'm happy to see you here and getting good medical advice and good legal advice. But my question is, what do you want the U.S. activists and people who push for democracy in this country, what would you like them to do so that they can get the U.S. supporting democratic processes in Africa rather than dictators? What do you want us to do?
I'll be brief. I want you to stand with the oppressed, not the oppressor.
Thank you so much. My name is Biggs, Aloysius Bigiro. My question is, it has become tradition for the African leaders to come to the West for specialized treatment. Those in power and, of course, those who are not in power as of yet. So, my brother and friend, Bobi Wine, if you were to be lucky to become a leader of Uganda, or as a member of parliament even right now, how do you hope to change this trend? Because while the leaders are able to get those specialized treatment, not everybody is lucky to get the same treatment. So what's your take on that?
Like I said, I'm lucky and humbled. One, that my brutality is seen by the whole world, and that I have the opportunity to come for specialized treatment. I've never left my country for treatment, but because of the distrust of our institutions, for example, I was brutalized. The second time I was arrested from the airport, I was brutalized in front of a government doctor. And because of what was injected in me, myself and my family was scared that our medical institutions did not have the ability to find out what exactly was in me. I was referred. And yes, because I was treated from Rubaga Hospital, which I really, really recommend the doctors who are highly professional. But after treating me of the wounds that they could treat me of, the bruises that they could treat of, they had to refer me because my back had more complications. I had to get more specialized treatment in the United States. But my hope and prayer is that together as the people of Uganda will make our home well, we will make our hospitals well on the standard that we don't have to leave our home for medical treatment, because this is just me, but thousands upon thousands of Ugandans need good health care, and they cannot afford to leave their country. And indeed, they should not be leaving their country to be treated elsewhere. This has ever been there. We've ever had good hospitals. We indeed can have good hospitals if our leaders serve for the benefit of their people.
But I think it needs to be brought out, and I think the Ugandan government has been unfair in this. Bobi's torture, the two more sessions, doctors were in their presence, and I think at the time that you were removed from the airport, there was actually a doctor in the ambulance witnessing another brutal beating. And in fact, they unscrewed the light bulb so journalists couldn't see them beating Bobi in the ambulance. So when you lose respect and the ability to believe that the doctors are actually going to be looking after you, and now we've seen today that there's been some report released that Bobi was fine. Well, the Ugandans can try this kind of bogus trick. But my message to the Ugandans is, we have him in specialized care. We have details and documented analysis and treatment going on. There is not going to be any doubt about what happened. But what we're going to do is use that information with the authorities in the United States, with the authorities at the United Nations, and attempt to seek retribution. This is a fight that is much more than a political fight in terms of media. This is a fight to actually change the methodologies used by the Ugandan government to torture their people. The goal is that Ugandans will have the rights that their government signed them up to under the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights. What happened in Arua was that there was a by-election, and the government and the army were very unhappy that they lost. And rather than determine to make Uganda better, they determined actually to assassinate Bobi. Because the torture is a side play. They wanted to kill him, and that's why his driver was murdered in exactly the position they expected Bobi to be in. So this bunk from the government, nobody believes. Because this is a government that is afraid to actually compete in Uganda for the votes of its people. Because they have no policies. They don't want to debate policies. What they want to do is intimidate and break the opposition. And Bobi's goal and that of many other Ugandans is to make sure that doesn't happen. So again, thank you very much.
Very briefly, can you say a few words in Swahili and Uganda for our international audience?
Can I speak in Luganda, please?
Sure.
Eri bannayuganda mwenna, nkyali mulamu. Nvuddeyo okujja okwogera nammwe newankubadde abasawo bange ne famire yange badde tebaagala njogere kuba mbadde nkyali mu bujjanjabi, nenziza okwogera gye muli kuba nafuna omukisa okunyigirizibwa kwange, newankubadde bantu bangi nnyo banyigirizibwa abali oboolyawo n'okusinga nze. Njagadde mbere eddoboozi eri mmwe n'okwogera ebigenda maaso mu ggwanga lyaffe, okumakinga sure nti kino ekyantuuseeko tekiddamu kutuuka ku muntu mulala yenna yenna. Nkyali mugumu, musigale nga muli bagumu, musigale nga mwagala ensi yammwe, nga mukkiririza mu nsi yammwe, era nga mukkiririza mu nkyukakyuka, nga buli omu agamba munne nti people power, our power. That was brief, right?
I agree with everything he said.
Sure.